Hi, Adam. Thanks for speaking to us today. So, what was your role at Liverpool? It was head of social media, but what did that actually entail?
Pretty much everything and anything as you'd probably expect with that line of questioning there. Yeah, although it was head of social media within the digital department, when I arrived, probably had less commercial and marketing activities associated with that back in kind of 2017. But then as the Liverpool grew as a success on the pitch, as a kind of club off the pitch, yeah, my role entailed a lot of commercial work, marketing work, and a lot of partnership work as the years went on. That part of the business became very, very important as it has done at most sports organisations, but also football clubs. So from a day-to-day basis, it would be the general social media, managing the club accounts, growing our following, engaging with our audiences, covering our kind of on-pitch activity. But then as the years went on, I suppose my time got split with the likes of working with our commercial partners like Standard Chartered, AXA, Nike, etc., Expedia. So there's a lot of time dedicated to that as we went on. So yeah, it was split very much between digital media and probably commercial, but probably the latter as the years went on.
Let's leave monetization and the commercial part for a second. We will come to that. But your general approach to growing reach and engagement, what principles did you bring to your work at Liverpool?
I mean, I was quite fortunate coming into Liverpool that Liverpool is a really authentic city. It's a really kind of historic club. I know every football club says that, and to a point, they actually have got a history and they are really unique. But Liverpool as a city is really truly special. And what we try to do as a not just a social team, a digital team, we try to embrace that and all of those kind of differences that come with being a Liverpudlian and Scouse and living in this city. We try to be really authentic. We try to reach our audience and engage with Scousers first, and then that grew out because all around the world, when we went on pre-season tours and when we were speaking to fans abroad, everybody wanted to be part of Liverpool. It wasn't that they wanted just to be part of Liverpool Football Club; they wanted to be part of the city, and that goes back to having stuff like people in Thailand and Indonesia would create banners that are on the cop, but they would create them in kind of the really true, authentic Scouse way because they wanted to feel part of that kind of Scouse community. So we tried to embrace that as much as we could, and yeah, authenticity was probably, I know it's a word that gets branded around, but it was really, really important to us as a football club and as a social media team.
Did you have a written down strategy? Did you deal with personas? Because I've worked in digital social media for 20 years or so, and you've been in it for virtually as long as that, I think. And it's grown very organically, and it's been given over because it's the skill sets aren't acquired by the sort of front office, the C-suite people. A lot of it is given over to the young people within the organisation
Yeah.
to manage it. And but by that definition, by that route, often there aren't specific policies. It's a little bit ad hoc. It's a little bit made up as you go along because this is
Yeah.
a discipline that has grown up over the last 20 years. So it's very new and it's very organic. So it won't be, but there is. It strikes me that there is a need to be more formulaic, to be more management focused, to be not rigid but flexible within your approach, but have to be grounded, I suppose, is what I'm looking at. So how did you cope with that process, or did you cope with that process?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's a really good point actually overall. And probably when I arrived, they social had been kind of with the web team for a while, for about a year and a bit. So I was kind of the first head of social for a long, long time. And I think you're right. For the first couple of years, it was pretty much as you mentioned, 2017, 2018. But as we've kind of got more, I would say, advanced as a team, and the sub departments have been working close together, stuff like personas is huge to Liverpool. Like we have the last 18 months, maybe 2 years now, data has played a huge role in everything we've done, especially from what's come from the marketing and insights team. And that data has helped us kind of influence our digital strategy and our content strategy, and just our strategy as a club. And that may be, as you kind of alluded to there, having different kind of strategies for different locations around the world. So how we engage with our American audience is completely engaged to, is it completely different to how we engage from our global feeds, which has a bit of a wider, more broader role. But the American feeds has a bit more of a specialized role. And the two are completely opposite. But at the end of the day, they're pretty much doing the same job, which is engaging with that audience, growing our audience, and ensuring that Liverpool are everybody's choice around the world. So, yeah, it probably wasn't there the first couple of years, but personas has definitely been something the club has taken on with the use of external companies to help kind of establish what we should be looking at and how we should be going after fans all around the world.
Let's put a bit of flesh on the bones there. So, because I had this process with Arsenal and Liverpool and Arsenal, two historic clubs that go around the world, names known all over the world. And what we're talking to here is Benfica's, effectively their think tank, their ideas about how to grow them around the world. And with respect to Benfica, they might not have quite the name of Liverpool and Arsenal, but they're still a pretty damn big name.
Of course, yeah.
So how did you reach? So it's about putting the flesh on the bones of your previous answer. How did you find a story that resonated in America, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in India, wherever you go? Because Liverpool are targeting everywhere, I suppose. So how do you make those stories different? What resources did you have as well to make this happen? Because that's crucial. You're going in-house, you're going agency, how are you communicating with them? So just give us a thumbnail sketch of this network of overseas social media.
So when I arrived late 2017, we had 22 Twitter feeds and we had 12 Facebook pages, which was just an enormous operation. And I would say probably 75% of that was freelancers, and I would class as kind of super fans in the sense that they would work on behalf of the club, but they wasn't digitally had a digital background or journalistic experience and all of those type of things, or a platform's expertise. As you know, we get a lot of insights from the platform themselves to be able to do what we do really well. And we set out to kind of trim that down. A lot of these accounts didn't align with where we had audiences, where Liverpool were of interest, or they didn't align with our business objectives. We got that over time within about 6 months to 5 Facebook feeds and I think it's 7 Twitter feeds. And they all aligned with what we do as a business, what we do commercially, and where we've got fans, where we want to grow from a wider, like I mentioned, a business objective. But to the point that I noticed the biggest difference, and it was something that we set out to achieve because we just wasn't making that cut through, is the local expertise is huge. Like it's massive, to the sense that we can't just go, right, this is our Brazil strategy, for example, or this is what we're going to do with the US, because we don't understand the US. Like we speak the same language, but it may as well be a different one in terms of how people think, feel, in terms of what fandom is out there, in terms of how people live their lives, how they're attracted to sport, personalities. So we made a decision as a department that we would lean heavily on our agencies. And at first it's a bit uncomfortable because they were coming back with suggestions that, to be honest, didn't make sense to us as a team. Probably wouldn't work as a broader on a global feed perspective, but we had to trust them. And these are the guys with the local skills, expertise. They got to ear to the ground. They understand the culture, the different way of feeling. They understand what it means to be a Liverpool fan in Indonesia or Thailand or China. And we had to fully embrace that and not just give them a list of kind of parameters and say, this is what you got to work within. So first biggest thing that we did was strip all the accounts down. Secondly, was fully embrace those local agencies and actually bring them on board and treat them as an extension of our own social team, which we hadn't done for a while. And the results speak for themselves. We've been able to create some amazing content and reach fans all around the world, and in the process grow those audiences in a very authentic way.
And how does the overseas strategy in particular, I know with Premier League clubs, overseas is massively important.
Yeah.
especially the monetization of overseas, just because the UK feels quite saturated and the new money is overseas. So let's just talk about the commercial part. Having built the reach, having built the engagement, having proved there are fans there who will engage with you on social media, how did Liverpool seek to commercialise? And crucially, and this happens everywhere, how did that clash with the editorial team? Because it always does.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, it does clash. One of the biggest things that we did as a department, I suppose we were quite fortunate, that we were very close with our partnership and commercial team. Now we've got sponsors, Standard Chartered, AXA, that have a very specific audience that they market, and that is Asia. And obviously, we've got a big following in Asia. So something we set out early doors is that we worked with the partners very very aggressively in a very good way to say, like, this is our audience. We'll tell you everything we need to know, everything you need to know about them. Like, we want you to connect with them through our channels in an authentic way. Because as you probably know from your previous roles, is there's nothing worse than a partner piece coming over, and it's built for their channels and not yours. So the biggest process we had to do as a department and as a club is educate our partners. And once we did that, and you've seen some of the stuff, we've had Nivea, which has been won awards in Europe for the Van Dijk and Sadio Mane pieces we've done. Standard Chartered I think have won awards as well. But this is all content that, if they had created and without our input, may just have missed the mark a little bit. And as you know from your experience, you miss the mark a little bit in football, you may as well miss it by a mile. So educating our partners in terms of how they should speak, how we should deliver content as a collaboration is huge. And it's something it's helped Liverpool get ahead with branded content, partnership campaigns, commercial opportunities, monetization. So having that relationship with the partners and not just seeing them as, go on then, send us over a video and we'll put it out on our feeds, because that doesn't do anything for us, the partners, and the audiences. So it was bringing that synergy between the three of those together.
And with that in mind, you're talking about working together with different departments, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that also always happens is you probably know where I'm going here. The younger, more junior people who are running social
Yeah.
get told what to do by the people at the top who are much older, speak literally a different language, and have different visions of success. Did you manage to move towards a little bit more two-way engagement where everyone's educating each other? I bring that up just because you're presenting a picture of mutual respect and collaboration with the partners, but did it actually happen within the club? Because that's fundamentally important too.
Yeah, I mean, it did, but it didn't happen quick. I mean, that's the reality of it, as you probably would expect that to be the answer. It took a lot of kind of convincing and managing up. I was quite fortunate that our department was headed up by Miriam Sherlock, who is just a fantastic communicator, both up and down. And she was able to kind of take all of our knowledge as a digital team and present that up. I think the biggest thing that really really helped us was that our team is fully embedded with Jurgen Klopp. Now, Jurgen Klopp and the players internally are like the biggest thing outside of the fans. Like, they're the biggest assets, as we know. The manager, one of the best managers that the club's ever had. Like, his personality is so unique. So to be able for him to talk about what the digital team do is massive. So there was meetings in America during pre-season, and the digital team, Miriam and the team, had a conversation with some ownership, just talking general stuff. And as they came out the door, Jurgen had just come off a shoot and he was laughing his head off. And those type of things really helped us get the buy-in from, like, they probably don't understand, to your point, the specifics of, or platform specifics of Facebook, Twitter, what works, algorithms, all of that type of stuff. But they understand when the manager's happy. They understand when the players are buying into it. We did a big Chowco piece a few years ago with John Henson, which was a spoof, and it went down really well. Now, you don't get that stuff, as you know, by just asking a player to do it. You really need to have those relationships built. You really need to get their trust. And having the trust of Melwood and now the AXA Training Centre has allowed the club to be able to create really strong commercial stuff. And at the end of the day, if the partners are then going to our CEO or our head of partnerships and saying, this content is brilliant, or external peers are saying to them, like, what you guys are doing in the partnership space is great. That allows that buy-in. But yeah, it wasn't overnight. It wasn't over a couple of months, but getting those quick wins and the content speaking volumes really helped us basically communicate that in a way that people above, to your point, is they understand the value, they understand the engagement, they understand the feedback they're getting internally and externally.
What about when you made a mistake?
Yeah, it's it's a good question actually. Fortunately, there's not been too many mistakes we've made as a club. I can honestly say that hand on heart. There's things we've missed the mark, I suppose, from a commercial perspective, or content could be better, or we've not been quite at it, or um, but the good thing at Liverpool was it sounds a bit of a cheesy phrase, the kind of fail fast, but we were dead honest. And I know you've been up to Liverpool many times, and the culture of it was about 80% Scouse, and probably 80-90% Reds as well. I think what you get with Liverpool, which is really unique, is nobody's content with great, with good. People want to keep doing better. So if we were slightly off it, or something was okay or good, I've been in previous roles where you come and you go, "Oh, that was great last night. Or, that was brilliant." They'd be like, "Okay, that was good. Like, what can we do next?" So there was always that burning desire to do better or keep moving along. And yeah, that's just the Scouse mentality, which is infectious and is just absolutely incredible. So yeah, there's always the pressure to keep moving forward.
Um, every club, uh, every club's story, it seems to oscillate more wildly these days. You win and everything's great. You lose, everyone should be sacked immediately. So fan criticism follows every big club. It followed Arsenal, it'll follow Liverpool, it'll follow Benfica. How do you cope with that socially negative sentiment, especially if it builds over time, because it can become very destructive?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I tried to educate to my team was think like a fan, act like a fan, was in the sense that if you just like, we went through a really bad period, December to February, where Liverpool literally didn't win a game, and looks like top four was out. We had more injuries, out of the Champions League. Like, it was a really bad run for what Liverpool fans have experienced in recent years. So there has kind of been that they was at this really real high, and then they've dropped to this real low, like almost in the space of a couple of weeks, which was really, really tough. But I think sometimes it's just about being honest and having those conversations internally, saying, what is the benefit of putting this content out now? Or what is the benefit of us putting this out, to like, what are we getting out of it? So there was periods where we would respect and be a little bit quieter than we normally would. And that's not being silent. Like, I think there's a difference between being silent and a bit quiet, but it is understanding fan sentiment and not rubbing up the wrong way. Because in my opinion, there's nothing worse than almost not understanding fan sentiment itself. So if you've lost 2-0 on the Sunday, and then on the Monday you're putting out like some really funny, engaging content, or just some partnership stuff, that I would feel as a fan, and that's what I was asking my team to feel like a fan. What would you feel? Would you be happy seeing that, or could you just give that a few days breathing space to get over it and then move on? And yeah, we had to be quite tactical with how we published, and what we published. And like I said, going back to those relationships we had with both partnerships and the club, we were able to be fairly flexible with our content approach.
As I've said, I've been doing this 20 years, right? And one thing I've had to do is unlearn a lot of lessons.
Yeah,
It was done this way.
yeah,
Like, suddenly the metrics don't stack it up at all.
yeah,
I used to do 1,000-word chin stroking match reports, right? Nobody wants those anymore. Doesn't matter how good a writer I am or how
yeah.
intelligent I think I am. So that's a lesson I had to unlearn. And it was based on metrics, but it was also based on feel. So in your time in Liverpool, which was like three years, it's
Yeah.
recently, three or 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Yeah. What lessons have you had to unlearn?
It's a really good question. I mean, I've probably gone through the probably most aggressive 2015 when I was at BT, over to Everton, then Liverpool, to the current day of probably social media at changing at a million billion miles an hour. It's just every day is a school day. I think the biggest thing that I've not unlearned, but probably always have in the back of my mind is, don't create content that I necessarily just enjoy. Like, the content's not for me. Like, the content's for our audience. and always listen to the audiences. Like you can almost get too hepped up on, oh, this is a brilliant piece of content, but that's my view. Like that's just a single view. Like I do not forget who you're creating content for first and foremost, and spend the time working out what is it they really enjoy, what is it they hate, what is it they want to see more of, what is it they're getting bored of. Like all those type of questions is something that I always try and stick with me. So in terms of stuff to unlearn, is probably that, and probably a similar piece is don't get too close to platform and be a little bit more flexible in terms of changes because they will happen. And don't get caught in the way of, well, we don't do Instagram stories, but we've always done Instagram, mate. Well, sorry, there's a billion users on Instagram now, and there's hundreds of thousands of people viewing our Instagram stories every day. Get comfortable with it. Like you can't be a robot, you can't be a dinosaur. You have to learn and learn when new platforms come, because they're coming for a reason and people are engaging for a reason. So yeah, it's probably that learning factor in just having a very open mind and being very flexible to new changes, even if you're not comfortable. I mean, when TikTok came, I don't think any of us was comfortable with what the hell is this, like 2 and a bit years ago when it was just presented to us as a club. And
Dancing, music, dancing. What's
yeah,
going on?
we were the first Premier League club on it, and at the time that when they was explaining to us, we were kind of like, what the hell is this? But again, we knew that that's the future and that's what people are engaging with. And to engage, to your point earlier about engaging with younger audiences, and we've got a younger team, we've got a very creative team. This is what we need to dedicate our time for. So don't get hepped up on, well, we've always done Facebook, we've always done Twitter. So we need to make sure we're putting the same time and effort into them. When something new comes along, you have to give it the decency and you have to learn it and you have to get on board with it. Otherwise, you can fall behind very quickly, especially in football.
But also, I mean, also you can't just jump on every trend. You've got to take a little bit of time, research it, make sure it's got credibility, it's got audience, it can go somewhere. I mean, I was always trying to get Arsenal on lots of platforms, and some
Yeah.
of them worked, some of them didn't. But we got on SoundCloud, which looked really good. Didn't quite work in the way it didn't grow in the way it's intended to. It's still around. It was good for us for a period of time.
Yeah.
I got Arsenal on Pinterest. That's not grown in the way that I thought it might. It's still relevant. It's not bad to be on, but it's not going to be top of the shop. So you need to do a lot of research in those areas to make sure that it's relevant. And the other thing I was going to say is I wrote a book last year, and I'm writing another one at the moment. And the big phrase as an author is "kill your darlings." Be prepared to kill your darlings, which is pretty much what you just said.
Yeah.
Right. Last question.
Yeah.
This is for Benfica. So Benfica are in a position where, from my understanding, having spoken to Tiago and a few people, they are a very famous club in Portugal. In my opinion, the club of Portugal, albeit at the moment not the most successful club in Portugal, which brings some challenges with it. What would be your advice for developing their story for a new audience, thinking about social media growth, particularly overseas, talking about commercialization as well of that social media audience? So, I don't need to solve every issue because that's like a 4-year job I've just given you.
Yeah.
But just some building blocks, some mental building blocks about how to approach this.
Yeah, I mean, just some of the things that I've learned at Liverpool is I always used to say to my team, get comfortable with being uncomfortable is something that I always used to say, and I still think it's true now in terms of delivering content to audience and growing your audiences. Just don't get too caught up on what worked last year or the year before. Like, be really nimble and be really open to trying new things, and don't get caught up if it doesn't come off. To your point is, Liverpool don't jump on trends. Like, it was something we was really, really strong on because we wanted to maintain that authenticity and not just become another club. But at the same time, we were quite strong with our content ideas and made sure that we wanted to keep pushing boundaries and making sure that we were doing things first, or we're doing things bigger and better. And I think it's having that kind of mindset and openness to the world is changing, digital's changing, content's changing, players are changing, their needs are changing. Like, be on board and be willing to push boundaries. And to your point about having 1,000-word match reports, yeah, that's great and that's part of football. But don't get caught up on that's always going to be football. Like, how could you do a match report differently? And I think it's about pushing yourself all the time, because audience interests are changing a million miles an hour. They may be interested in something else next year. So, but what is that something else going to be? And dedicate a lot of time to your point again about platforms. Like, we jumped on TikTok, but we didn't jump on it overnight. I think we took 3 or 4 months internally. Like, is it right for us? Like, what are we getting out of it? How does this align with the business? What could it be in 6 months? What could it be in 12 months? What is it going to be eventually? And I think those discussions internally really helped us set up the kind of foundation for the success they're seeing on there now. But yeah, it's again, I've gone back to that word authenticity, but growing our overseas fans was making sure that we could have jumped on, like for Egypt, for example, we could have literally just put Mo Salah everywhere and that would have just got incredible engagement. But we wanted to grow what Liverpool is. So as well as putting Mo Salah front and centre, and because that's what the audience want, we're also educating people about what Liverpool is, what the cop represents, what does the city hold, what is the story behind the badge, who's Bill Shankly. Like, we were trying to hammer home all of those stories of what Liverpool is, and not just rely on, oh well, this has always worked, so we'll just continually doing this. So yeah, I think it's just being nimble, having that open mindedness, and just be willing to get uncomfortable with content and plans moving forward. Because, as you know from your own experience, some of the best ideas come from having the stupidest, wackiest, open conversations you can possibly ever imagine, and that's really healthy it was really healthy for my time at Liverpool, that we weren't just set in our ways of just working in a particular way.
Adam Hume, thank you very much.
No worries.